Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Ask Dave. A viewer asked me, what's the difference between the premier orchestras and the second tier or lesser orchestras? And it's a very good question, actually, because the situation is quite different from it was, when I started listening about 60 years ago, somewhere in there. It really is not the same, not a bit. And the recorded legacy bears this out. You can hear the difference, but the question is beyond that, does it matter? Does it really matter? Well, let me put it to you this way. An orchestra is a tool. It's a mechanism through which the composer's thoughts are sifted and strained and filtered, and with the help of a conductor who is the head guy there. And the results can be great from any orchestra, absolutely any orchestra. But there are physical differences, and they sometimes matter and sometimes don't. Let me put it to you this way. I'll use a little analogy with my handy recourse to the thing that I care about most after music, which is, of course, kitchen equipment. I have here 3 different fine mesh strainers. Here they are. They're all, strainers, and they strain things, right? Now this big Kahuna here is expensive. It was made by Rösli, I think in Switzerland, I think is where they are. And it's beautiful. It's like the Cadillac of fine mesh strainers, the DeLorean, the Ferrari. It's in orchestral terms, let's call this the Berlin Philharmonic, shall we? Now, the Berlin Philharmonic costs about 3 times what the other ones cost. It's larger. It's very well designed. I mean, it's really solid and beautiful. It's stainless steel. It has a nice long handle, a generous little, helper thing to sit on the rim of your sink or bowl or whatever you're doing. It's really a lovely piece of equipment. It absolutely is. There's no question that it evinces superior workmanship. Now, the second tier orchestras, or second tier strainers, are these. Now, this one is, let's see, who is it made by? Who knows? It doesn't even have a name. It's just a decent, good, definitely decent strainer. I mean, it's not as big as the Berlin Philharmonic here. Let's say this is the Seattle Symphony or the Atlanta Symphony, one of those groups. But it's, it has its little handle thing to sit on the rim of your sink. It has a nice grip. It's got mesh to strain with. And this one, which is a little bit smaller still, has all of the same things. And it actually has a really wonderful handle. This is made by OXO. OXO good grips. They always have nice handles that are comfortable and feel great. I mean, it has its own qualities. And it's smaller, but it may be better for smaller tasks. It depends on what you're doing with it, right? Now, here's the thing. The largest orchestras, the prestige orchestra here, our Rösli, or Berlin Philharmonic, has lots of money, a longer history of performance, although not always. It's not always necessary, but it does in this case. And it's going to last a long time. I mean, it's very, very well constructed. These others, well, they're just smaller. They may have, if they're orchestras, if this is Atlanta and Seattle here or whatever, if you want to call them that, these second-tier orchestras, or City of Birmingham, or wherever, the NDR Radio Philharmonic, call it what you like. They're not the prestige ensembles. They may be a little smaller in terms of numbers, in terms of their general constituency, a slightly smaller string section, and they may not have players of the same illustrious escutcheon as the major orchestras, but they're going to be very good. They're going to be very good because the point is, at the end of the day, the differences between all of these things are minimal. They really are. And they all do what they're designed to do, which is strain. And, they're going to strain. They have the same size mesh, basically, or similar sized mesh. You put something in there, and it strains, or sifts flour, or does whatever you're going to do. They all do it. And they all do it, quite frankly, equally well. The differences are totally marginal when it comes to the output, because what matters more than the kind of strainer you use is the chef, the person who's doing the straining. If the person who's doing the straining is a fabulous chef, you're going to have a fabulous result, irrespective of the fact that this may be the more glamorous strainer. The chef will strain, and the chef will see that everything is properly strained, and will do everything else necessary as far as the recipe goes to deliver a fabulous final result. So you could have very easily the smallest of all the orchestras. Here, you could have Seattle or whatever it is, or Birmingham and whatever, and NDR. And you're going to get an absolutely spectacular result if you have a spectacular conductor. It really doesn't matter. Now, when I was growing up, like I said, things were a little bit different. In the United States, you had the 5 major orchestras, which were Boston, New York, Chicago, Cleveland, and Philadelphia. Those were the 5. And they were all signed to major labels. And so they had the cachet. They had the reputation. There were no West Coast orchestras. And that today would sound silly because Los Angeles and San Francisco are as great as anybody. They're fabulous orchestras. And even Seattle is really very, very good. They're great. So, you can't, that paradigm no longer applies. Atlanta is a fantastic orchestra. They can all do whatever is necessary. St. Louis, amazing. And the same thing is true in Europe. You have all the radio orchestras. You have orchestras in every town. Some of them are better than others, but most of them can play anything. And if you have a conductor who knows what they're doing, then it makes absolutely no difference if the orchestra they're working with is this one or this one. They're all capable of delivering the goods on any given day. So it makes no difference these days. You have to take every performance as it comes and just listen. That doesn't mean they all sound the same, and it doesn't mean they're all the same. It isn't. They have different financial stability. They have different ability to attract major artists and major players. But there are so many of them nowadays that it's very, very difficult to point to any one group and say, oh, well, this is the outstanding ensemble. You just can't do that these days. And it's certainly not true when it comes to making recordings. It's all dependent on the conductor and the circumstances of the performance and how much the orchestra cares about what it's doing, whether it's just doing a job or whether it's gotten really enthusiastic about the project at hand. All of those factors tell. And that's not to say that, if you have the Concertgebouw or Vienna, the Vienna Phil, or the Berlin Phil, or the London Symphony, or one of those really, major European ensembles that get lots of subsidy and get a lot of attention, they may be more consistent. It may be true. They may have, a more glamorous sound. They may be doing more, like the Berlin Philharmonic is, to promote themselves. They have the money to do digital concert halls and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of the quality of the audible result, doesn't make any difference. It really doesn't. There are always some orchestras that I enjoy hearing because they had a distinctive sound. The Czech Philharmonic was one. The French orchestras, like the Paris Conservatory Orchestra, which no longer exists. There are reasons to listen, but if you listen to older recordings, let's say from the 50s and 60s, of second-tier orchestras, I was thinking of, for example, the Halle Orchestra in the UK under Barbaroli, or some of the creakier German radio orchestras when that system was just getting going, SWR under Hans Rosbaud and things like that. You can hear the difference. You can really hear the difference because the orchestras were just not as good. They were scrappy sometimes. They were undermanned sometimes. They still made records. They could still deliver a fabulous performance. But the sound of that performance was definitely different from what the prestige orchestras achieved. Nowadays, that's not true. It's really, really not true. Most people would have problems telling the difference between one of these major prestige orchestras and a very good performance by any respectable second-tier orchestra. They're all basically homogenized and sounding just as good because they all have players who are trained in the same places, by the same people, and it's no longer difficult to get first-class personnel to man your orchestra. And they all are filtering and straining equally with equal aplomb, even though this one may say it's better because it's bigger and it costs 3 times as much than this one. It's always possible. They can make those claims. But are you going to tell the difference? Which strainer was used to make the finished dish? Can you say when you eat your homard à l'américaine, oh, wow, they used a bad strainer? I mean, of course not. You're not going to know. You're not going to know. If the conductor's great and the orchestra's up for it and they're doing a good job, it makes no difference at all. And so that is the answer to your question. There used to be a bigger difference than there is today. Today, it's virtually irrelevant. They'll all get the job done if they're going to get the job done. It'll be fine. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.